my garbage person this week is Matt Walsh. Because of his commentary about climate change. Let's roll the footage.
During the hottest year on record, the global average surface temperature fell just shy of the 1.5 degree warming limit under the Paris Climate Agreement. This is not really the point. I just want to pause here. It's hilarious to me that we've set a limit for how hot the earth can be. So they got together and they said, here's the limit of how hot it can be. What do you mean there's a limit? Who cares about your limit? Like, what is that? You think you can set the thermostat for the earth and just decide this? They're saying it's the hottest in 125,000 years. Well before the dawn of human civilization, that's how far back they're going. And this is pretty simple. Your BS detector needs to be calibrated well enough to at least pick up on this kind of BS.
Yeah, it needs to be able to detect that BS that you just heard from him, because he is either as stupid as he played in that clip, or is just pretending to be that stupid, to not understand two relatively easy things. How you can figure out the temperatures of things without literally having to physically be there to measure it with a thermometer. And also, they're setting a limit for how hot Earth can be. Does he not know what that limit represents? Is he so incurious that he can't talk to a climate scientist about why they believe that an average global temperature change from the 20th century of 1.5 degrees Celsius would be a turning point? Yeah, it can get hotter than that, you dumbass. I can say that, right? Dumbass.
Yes.
You're a dumbass. It can get hotter. We don't want it to, because it'd be bad for us and our human bodies that have to exist in that climate. Now, obviously, I think he understands at least that much. He has to pretend that he's that stupid, but it gets dumber. Let's continue.
Nobody has any freaking idea what the temperature was tens of thousands of years before the pyramids were built, much less when the pyramids were being built. Nobody knows. Nobody. The truth, if you want to know how they really get these numbers, is that they pull them out of their asses. That's how they get them. But the scientist won't tell you that if you ask him. If you ask him, oh, where did you get this? He won't say, why, from my own ass, of course. That's where I got it, even though it's true.
That's not at all how the much less formulation is supposed to work rhetorically. You have it flipped there. You should look into it. But what I love about that is, the overall thing is, they used to come up with counter arguments to climate change or to global warming. They would say, no, it's this instead. They're just so lazy by comparison now. It's superstition. You pull it out of your ass. I got nothing. So I don't accept what you said. It's just, it used to have like a sort of insane conspiratorial dynamism to it that it doesn't anymore. It's just, I don't accept it. And meanwhile, by the way, what I love is this is a guy who definitely thinks that he is an intellectual. He 100% thinks that he's a very smart guy. He doesn't know how they measure the temperature. And rather than talking to someone, looking it up, no, you pull it out of your ass. It's the most boneheaded, dumb guy response to something. I don't understand it. I've thought about it for a minute and I don't understand it. So you, a person who've made your entire career on that, I'm not even interested. I'm not gonna find out. That is one way to live your life, Brett. Another way, for instance, is you could embed yourself in a team of climate scientists and go to the North Pole to try to figure this out. The thing is, like, I'm jokingly referring to True North. We were able to scrape that together at TYT. He works for a company that receives like just mountains of money from the rich. He could do that if he wanted to. He could just put out one less like stupid transphobic documentary this year, and he could actually learn something. He's not going to, because he'd lose his audience, he'd lose his brand if he were to do that, and he doesn't have the natural curiosity to even want to. So instead, it's just, it's superstition, it's out of your ass, blah. It's lazy, it's stupid. We should expect more out of our demagogues than that.
Two things. Matt Walsh admitted that his priority isn't truth. It's winning some kind of rhetorical war for an audience growth initiative. If it was truth, he'd look into all those things that John says he would inherently ask questions about and find answers to. No, he knows that it's a complicated thing. And so he is grateful and just says like, well, it's too complicated. It's obviously BS. What was the second thing? The second thing for Matt Walsh. Oh, Matt Walsh hates God and thinks the Bible's lying. because he said that there were things that happened 10,000 years before the pyramids. And anyone who reads the Bible knows that the earth is only 6,000 years old.
Where did those extra years come from?
Matt Walsh.
Oh,
they just make up numbers, don't they? Like people like Matt Walsh, they just make up numbers like 10,000. Where'd that number come from, Matt? Not the Bible, not from God. Smite him, smoted him.
I mean, we don't think he should be smoted, but according to his belief system, he should probably be smoted just to be sure.
All the parents are like, he obviously doesn't have a daughter old enough to watch Moana a bunch, or he would have said smoten.
I've seen Moana, I don't remember that, but I am looking forward to showing it to my daughter in the near future. And by the way, I'm already buying gifts for my daughter's first birthday. Sorry if that makes me gay or something, having a loving family. Anyway, so he was, I guess responding is technically what he was doing to some recent climate science. And he has to, because look, they would love to just not talk about climate change, to just not address it. But the issue is their audience is being smacked in the face with the proof of it every single day. And so they have to respond to it. And they know that their audience is seeing things like, oh, what do you know? 2023 was the hottest year ever recorded. So they have to try to respond to it. Some of them who are a little bit more creative than Matt Walsh will talk about sunspots or something. He just lazily moves his way through that segment. But we wanted to show you some of what has recently come out. As we implied, 2023 was a really bad year. You can see in chart 4 here, the increase in temperature. This is going back to 1850. And no, you did not need to send someone back to 1850 with a thermometer through a time machine to figure that out. That's not actually how we track the temperature over time. But you can see the fairly indisputable increase right there. And by the way, that 1.5 degrees Celsius line that he doesn't understand and won't Google, like literally just ask ChatGPT. Give me a summary of how that was determined and what it represents, designed for an 8-year-old. You could just do that. It would take 2 minutes and you could learn. But anyway, we are rapidly approaching that. It is actually very bad for us. It will be very bad for the world. You can see over the course of 2023, annual surface temperature anomalies, the map there. And the interesting thing about that, and you might remember from our earlier reporting on this, was that some of the greatest increases in temperature were not where you might, through common sense, expect, which is at the equator. No, it was actually at the northern and southern extremes where you had the Arctic experiencing massive heat waves, including just huge forest fires and things like that, which is obviously not good for Earth as well. So we're gonna get into some more of it, but Brett, what do you think?
It's just review. I mean, this is the hardest rhetorical argument to win. Is the to get people behind? It's just like such a, the argument is we're being slowly boiled alive like frogs. It's hard to convince a frog in that metaphor that it's slowly being boiled alive. So people like Matt Walsh are just capitalizing on that by oversimplifying and declaring victory because that feels better than finding a solution.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, in the same, like, look, when we were talking, I was joking about my daughter or whatever, like he has kids, they will have to live in the climate that we have at 10 years, 20 years, 40 years. What is that climate gonna be like? One would think that you would want your descendants to be able to live with tolerable temperatures. Other people seem to have no problem with us diving off the climate cliff and dooming future generations, their own descendants, to horrific living conditions. But okay, I guess you find some way to sleep with that approach. Anyway, we need to catch up a little bit. So I'm just gonna jump to the community garbage person of the week. 54,000 of you voted this week. Thank you to all of you who went to the community tab earlier in the week and voted. Here are your top 5. Coming in at number 5 with 3% of the vote, you have Jonathan Majors for comparing himself to Martin Luther King Jr. That was a crazy one. Number 4 with 7% of the vote, we have Nikki Haley for lying about not raising the retirement age and being caught out on the spot. That was fun. Number 3 with 10% of the vote, you have Aaron Rodgers for blaming the media on his Kimmel attacks. And by the way, is already back on the Pat McAfee show. Like he, with no evidence, claimed that a talk show host was a pedophile, and he was suspended informally for like a day, or maybe a week. I don't know, but that's crazy. Number 2 with 16% of the vote, the runner-up, Elon Musk for banning left-wing journalists. Only number 2, hashtag I stand with Ken Klippenstein. But no, number 1, 63% of vote, and your community garbage person of the week is Elise Stefanik for saying that January 6 rioters were hostages. I'm actually kind of surprised that that one stood out so much for the audience, but yeah, still ridiculous. The fact that she has remade herself in this MAGA image over the past few years is insane as well.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.